Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ignorant Intellectual on Media. Today, I thought we'd do our next episode of my CD library, get through another um, 20 discs, get on our way up to A. We're still in the B's. If you watched my previous videos, you'll know that I put all my CDs away in the boxes. And, when you start a box, you start with alphabetical order, you're putting the A's in first, and then the B's will go on top, and then the C's will go on top. And then when you open it up to take them out, you're going C, B, A. So we're still in the B's. We're getting down to the A's, and then we'll move on to a second box. Anyway, so today I got 20 of them, and let's go through them. See how long this takes. First person I'd like to speak about is Beck. All right. If you don't know who Beck is basically a musical genius, especially in the 90s. Uh, Probably the most famous song of his that people know is "Loser." It was big in the clubs back in the mid '90s. Um, there we go. All right, so I have in this batch I have 5 of his CDs. Okay, so let's go through them. All right, so we got "Mutations," which came out in 1998, and it's his sixth. "Mellow Gold," which came out in 1994, which is his third, which is the one that has "Loser" on it. All right. Um, "Midnight Vultures," which is his seventh studio album, and it came out in 1999. And "Modern Guilt," which is his 11th album, which came out in 2008. And "Guerrero," or "Guerrero," which is his ninth, which came out in 2005. So, how would you describe Beck? That's the thing about Beck. It's the thing about musical geniuses. There's another guy that in Canada who I would put in the same category, and that would be Huxley Workman. The man can make any kind of music, and he can play almost any kind of instrument. Right? He's a great Canadian um, musician. His best album is probably Lover slash Fighter. If you ever want to go find Huxley Workman, get into some Canadian music, Huxley Workman is a guy that you should check out, and Lover Fighter is probably his best album. Anyway, but with Beck is an eclectic guy. He mixes, you name it, he mixes it in. He has electronic, he has hip hop, he raps, he sings. He mixes in blues. I don't know, maybe not blues, but you got dance, you got electronic, you got sampling, you got all this stuff, hip hop, all this stuff, all mixed in into this big mishmash of music that's just amazing music. All right, so um, if you haven't heard of Beck and you want to check him out, probably his best album is Odelay. All right, and I'll put it up here. I have 5 of his albums. One of them isn't Odelay in this part because I have it stuck up on the wall because I'll put LPs up on my wall and then I'll, do a collage of CDs around the LPs and the frames that I've put up. And I think Odelay is one of them. I would have to double check, but so it's on my wall. That's why it's not in with these other 5 albums. Anyway, so Beck, I would put Odelay. Remember, I was talking about when I go through my CDs, I'll mention the ones that are like I would put in my top 100 or top 200 or ones that I think are the greatest albums of all time. Beck's Odelay would be one of them. All right, so search it out, find it, listen to it on Spotify or on iTunes or whatever, and let me know what you think in the comments. Anyway, but Beck kind of goes all over the place. So every album that you pick up is just a little bit different than another album. He adds a different element, or he takes out and puts something else in, or whatever, right? So probably his best album, like I said, is Odelay. Probably his second best album is the one that has Loser on it, all right, which is Mellow Gold. So search that one out as well. And I think his third best album would be this one, which is Midnight Vultures. Kind of got a disco feel to it, right? And it's pretty good as well. But all of them, I mean, these two here, people, the funny thing with Beck is, okay, so you take these two here, right? All right. Um, a lot of people will say one of those is his best album as well. So it's like you can't really miss with Beck, right? So, but like I said, I think Odelay is his best, but I'll let you decide when you investigate him if you haven't yet. All right. So that's Beck. All right. So next up is uh is one of the great '70s bands. All right. Uh, and I have their first two albums, and then I kind of moved on from there because um, they're kind of sporadic with their albums, right? So once these two came out, then there was some problems and everything, and then it took, I don't know, like a decade or something to come out with their third album or something. So but their first two albums, which is Boston and Don't Look Back, Boston came out in 1976, and Don't Look Back came out in 1978. All right, so I don't really have to explain Boston to you. If you love classic rock or music from the '70s, you're going to come across Boston. You had to have heard like what are some More Than a Feeling, rock and roll band, Smokin', Hitch a Ride, Something About You, Let Me Take You Home Tonight. These are all classic rock staples, right? So um, I don't really need to explain Boston to you, right? All right, so that's Boston. Next up is Bonobo. And no, not the chimpanzee or the monkey or whatever, or the ape or whatever, but Bonobo, the DJ from London. I think he's from London. Anyways, he's from Great Britain, but he kind of moved across the pond and came to LA and hit the dance scene in LA. And so Bonobo, I have two albums. All right, I have a Days to Come, which is his third album, which came out in 2006. All right, and I have his mixed album. All right, which is called It Came from the Sea. All right. So it's kind of electronica, trip hop, ambient music. This is a mixed one of not his songs, but he did it for a set of compilation um, albums for Ninja Tune, right? Um, so this is like a really so this one shows off his musical talent, all right, and this one shows off his DJ talent, how he mixes everything, right? So he's extremely good. Um, I continue looking for more of them. This Days to Come, which is his third, actually came out in a regular disc and then a two disc special edition, right? So limited edition version of it. So I ended up finding the limited edition version of it where you got two CDs or whatever, right? So um, and he's really good. If you like electronic music, he's kind of mellow and slower, so it's more of a melodic, you know. Got a slower feel to it, kind of like uh, Air or other bands that do the electronic thing. But he can kick it up into higher gear as well, which you will see on this DJ, this one here, right? Um, so he's kind of comfortable in both. But I enjoy him, and I picked him up because I really enjoy slower melodic electronic music. It's got that repetitive feel, kind of trance-like, that kind of it just relaxes you. It's a good day, good thing to listen to when you're relaxing after work or whatever. Right? So that's Bonobo. All right, and then next up is another band or a group that's similar to that. All right, and I have one, two, three, four of their albums. All right, and they're called Boards of Canada. All right, so Boards of Canada is actually not from Canada; they're from Scotland. So I'm not sure why they called themselves Boards of Canada, but they're up there with some of the greatest electronic artists of all time. Everything started with who with Kraftwerk or the guys around Kraftwerk, uh, and then it just moved on from there. And these guys, I have four of their albums. All right, um, I have this was their first, which was Music Has the Right to Children. It came out in 1998. All right, all right. Then I have their second, which is GeoDaddy, which came out in 2002. And then I have their third, which is the Campfire Head Phase, which came out in uh, 2002 as well, and unless I wrote it down incorrectly. And then I have Tomorrow's Harvest, which is their fourth, which took them like a decade to come out with it. And this one is their fourth, and it came out in 2014. All right. Now, when speaking of the greatest electronica artists, Boards of Canada's got to be up there. All right. So, especially their first two albums. Their first two albums are just amazing. All right. If you want to relax, you want to kind of get a spacey feel, kind of get um, uh, a trancey feel to your music, maybe while you're doing something else, or maybe when you're, closing your eyes, maybe you'll take a nap like I do because I'm old, right? I'll listen to Boards of Canada. It's extremely good. And they'll add little snippets of voices. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Um, they'll add little snippets of voices, like music has a right to children. You hear a section where you have a baby's voice in it. And anyways, it's extremely good. And, if you haven't checked out Boards of Canada, you should definitely check out Boards of Canada, especially if you like electronica music like I do. All right. All right. Next up is um, one of the great BritPop bands from the 90s. Um, they were in competition. There was always this competition going on between them and Oasis. All right. So when talking about Britpop of the 90s, you have Oasis, you have Blur, which are these guys. All right. I have three of their albums. I have Leisure, which is their first from 1991. Then I have uh, Blur, which has their most famous song, which is song number two, or song two. All right. And that came out in 1997. It's their fifth album. And then I have Think Tank, which is their seventh album, which came out in um, 2003. All right. Um, so they were huge in the 90s. They were like, the direct quote unquote competition to Oasis. And Oasis, many consider Oasis as the greatest, 90s Britpop band. And for success and for a number of great albums, they've had like at least three great albums. I would say, yeah, that's true. But the greatest album in Britpop that era of Britpop isn't Oasis and isn't Blur. It's um, it's the Stone Roses, their self-titled album. So if you can find the Stone Roses self-titled album, pick it up. You're going to be blown away by that one. Oasis, they're probably there's a What's the Story, Morning Glory is probably their best album. So if you haven't checked out any Britpop, that's one that you should check out. With Blur, it's this one here, but this one's kind of gone away from Britpop. They kind of had some Britpop stuff. They started off with this album, and then they moved on with Park Life was probably their greatest album, their greatest Britpop album. It's called Park Life. I'll show it here. And then you know, they kind of moved away from it, and this is probably their second best album. And they kind of got a little bit more a rock and roll feel to this album that they put out, which is their self-titled album, their fifth album. All right, and this one's kind of interesting because it still has those elements um, that they're famous for in their earlier albums, but then they kind of added a bit of a kick to it, kind of like American rock and roll kick to it, and it just, yeah, that's really good. And song two is a perfect example of that, right? So that short song just kind of blew everybody away, right? Anyway, so that's Blur. They're up there, okay. But if you want to investigate Britpop, what albums should you listen to? I would say, okay, start with these four albums, all right, and then go on from there. There's a lot more, but these four albums. Number one would probably be the Stone Roses, their self-titled album. Oasis, What's the Story, Morning Glory. Blur's Park Life, and then there's a fourth band, and their name is Pulp, and they put out a album called Different Class. I'll put it here, and that one is extremely good as well. It has a song on it that I can't remember the name of it. I'll put it here. That speaks about a rich girl who wants to know what it feels like to be common people is the name of the song. Um, that song blew me away the first time I heard that one. Made me a Pulp fan, even though they were, Pulp is one of the bands that were like, back in the '80s, and I think they even moved, yeah, back to the early '80s, and they just never were successful until the '90s hit, and they kind of uh, were grouped in with all the great Britpop bands of the '90s, that renaissance of Britpop that hadn't been around since the '60s or early '70s, right? So, um, and yeah, A Different Class is an extremely good album as well. So, all right, so those four albums. All right, so next up, I have an album called Boris. Sorry, the band is called Boris. They're from Japan. They're kind of a heavy metal band, and it's rare to get a good heavy metal band coming out of Japan, anyways. But they call themselves Boris, and they named their album, which this one is their 10th, and it's called Pink. Now, it took them 10 albums, I guess, because when people speak of Boris, they speak of this album being the best one, right? So um, it took 10 albums for them to be considered a great heavy metal band. But when you do speak about, the great heavy metal um, albums of between 2000 and 2010, this one always makes the list. And I have not listened to it, but out of reputation because of that, I found it and I picked it up and I'm going to listen to it. All right. So have you listened to this? Have you listened to Pink? Not the girl, but the album Pink from Boris, the Japanese heavy metal band. Um, Tell me what you think if you've listened to this. Is it good? Should I avoid it? Should I listen to it and start doing my head or what? I really like metal, but my go-to is more garage punk kind of thing when it comes to more, heavy stuff, right? But I do love heavy metal. All right, so that's Pink from Boris. Next up is Bonnie Prince Billy, who's an American, but he's got a British name. All right. This is I See Darkness, which is his sixth album. It came out in 1999. I have not listened to it. I don't know much about him, but it's indie folk is what they call it. So I'll see if I like that when I listen to it. Have you listened to Bonnie Prince Billy? What do you think of him? All right. And then there's another metal album, but this one is I really enjoyed. I've listened to this album numerous times. But do you think you can find this album with the song Cop Killer on it, which is one of the great songs from this album? Okay, so this is Body Count. It's their self-titled album. All right, it's their first. It came out in 1992, and it's basically Ice-T's metal band, right? So him and another guy, I can't remember his name. His name Eddie. His name is Eddie, isn't it? He did the guitar work on it. Uh, Anyways, um, them two got together because Ice-T, he became big in rap or hip hop, but he always had an affection. He grew up listening to heavy metal, so he decided he wanted to do some heavy metal music as well. So he created this band called Body Count, and this album is an extremely fun album. You can't really take it too seriously. If you do, then uh, you might get a bit scared. I guess I don't know, but if you don't take it too seriously, because Ice-T has a wicked sense of humor, all right. And Cop Killer is one. Maybe who was serious about that one, but there was such a backlash from Cop Killer that actually this version of Body Count, this CD, does not have Cop Killer on it. He actually took it off the album, so only early stuff had Cop Killer on it, right? So, if I'm reading it correctly, right? So, but Cop Killer, if a cop gets in your way, just go kill him. Let's hunt down all the LAPD and kill all of them, kind of idea, right? And there was such a backlash on it. He took it off the album. But the best song, there's a couple of really funny songs on this album, and it's the reason why I really enjoy listening to it a lot. And that one is KKK Bitch, which is basically his band and him touring down south and sleeping with whatever girls they want or whatever. And he gets involved with a girl who ends up being the daughter of the Grand Wizard of the KKK and getting her pregnant, right? So um, that I'm sorry, but I had to laugh at that. That was extremely funny, right? So just imagining that scenario, what would the you know what would the father do when she has a mixed race black baby, right? So, anyways, but uh, like I said, Ice-T has a wicked sense of humor. And there's another one. It's called what is it? Something Dick. Um, Evil Dick. Yeah, Evil Dick. Have you heard that song? It's about, once the sun goes down and it's nighttime, he can't stay at home. His dick takes over his brain. He's got to go out and go sleep with people, right? So it's pretty funny. And there's another one that's pretty funny, but also really serious. Is Mama's Gotta Die Tonight, which is, a song about how his mother really hates white people and brought Ice T up to be racist against white people, and then he realizes that white people aren't as bad as his mother says, and so he's got to kill his mother, something along those lines. And anyway, so um, overall, I mean, it's a violent, metal. That's what metal is, right? So um, it's violent. It's controversial lyrics and fast guitar-driven metal music, and but Ice-T's got a wicked sense of humor, and a lot of it comes out in the album. It's quite funny. All right. So last but not least is a band from Vancouver, out in the west coast of Canada. It's called Bob's Your Uncle, and this came out in 1993, and it's their third and last album. It's called Cages. All right. So Bob's Your Uncle was kind of like an indie rock band that was popular in the 90s, or a bit popular. I don't know how popular they were outside of Vancouver, but their lead singer and guitarist is a girl named Sook-Yin Lee. All right, and Sook-Yin Lee, um, I'm a big fan of. All right, I'm not a big fan of people. All right, most people don't impress me, or if they're impressive, I don't think of them as anything better than me. They're a human being. They, sit down to take a shit and they put their socks on one at a time, so on and so forth, just like everybody else. I've never really got into the fan idea of music or any other thing where you end up wearing like a basketball player's jersey with his name on the back of it. I could never clue into that. Or going to a concert because you really like Ozzy Osbourne and just go psycho at the concert. I've never really been into that kind of thing. Like fandom has never been because I look at anybody else and I look at them and they're good at something, but it doesn't mean I should worship them like they're some sort of god, right? Sorry. Um, they're just like me, right? So um, they have a talent. I have a talent. It doesn't really matter. They're still all human beings in the end, right? So um, do I really care what uh, a celebrity or somebody famous has to say about a subject? I do not. I don't want to know about their personal life. I don't read the tabloids. I don't, read the TikToks about personal lives of other people that I don't know. I don't judge them either because I don't know them, right? So um, the idea of celebrity or famous people is, you know, I, it's kind of laughable in my opinion. But anyway, so I do like their talent though. So if I do watch basketball and I watch Michael Jordan, I don't think Michael Jordan's any different than me. I'll go, oh, you're so great, Michael Jordan. I love you. Can you sign my jersey or whatever? No, I don't really do that. But I do appreciate watching him, jump, from the 3-point line or from the top of the key and and dunk the ball. It's like an amazing thing to see, right? Or watching, like Ken Griffey Jr. hit a home run or whatever. These kind of things. I'm quite impressed with that, but um, I'll judge the person on their character rather than on their talent, right? You know, uh, Joe Pesci might be a great actor, right? Or Robert De Niro might be a great actor, but what kind of person are they, right? So that's where I look at it, and because they are a person, they're not some sort of god. I look at them as as a peer or whatever, as a fellow human being, right? I don't really go, starry-eyed by anybody, right? So anyway, but me saying that, if if I was going to get close to it, Sook-Yin Lee would be one of the people that I'm quite impressed with her. All right, so the reason why I'm quite impressed with her is because she's done everything in Canadian entertainment. It's she's, I mean, if they created a Canadian Walk of Fame, I think it's in Toronto. To copy, like Canadians do so much, copy the American Walk of Fame in Hollywood, right? So um, if that didn't exist and we were going to start it, Sook-Yin Lee would be the first person I'd put a star down on the pavement for. All right. So she was in this band. This is her. So they've released 3 CDs. She wrote the music and played guitar on it. So she's a musician and a songwriter. All right. Um, then when this band broke up, she joined Much Music, which is the Canadian um, equivalent to MTV, right? Which basically they came about to show music videos. So it's actually basically a TV radio station that has visuals to it, so you can watch videos while you're listening to the music, right? That's why MTV and Much Music came out. And she was a Much Music VJ, and she was on during the day for a while. And so she had her show on Much Music, and then CBC Radio approached her to host uh, a show on CBC Radio 1, which was called Definitely Not the Opera. So she did that for a bunch of years as well. And all the while she's doing that, she's also acting in films. And one of her best films um, is called Short Bus. So I've been looking for that film everywhere. I saw it because I was at the library, um, and I found that movie at the library. So I watched it, then I returned it, but it's not in my personal library because I just can't find it yet. I haven't been able to find it yet. But Short Bus, it's a really good Canadian film. Um, and so while she's VJing and while she's doing Definitely Not the Opera, she ends up doing films and acts in films as well. So she does everything in entertainment. She's very good. I'm quite impressed with her, and I would put her on the Canadian Walk of Fame easily. All right, so that's Sook-Yin Lee, and that's her band, Bob's Your Uncle, and this is their third album called Cages, and it came out in 1993. I can't find their first two albums, which is something that is atypically Canadian, where a lot of the best stuff that you're looking for, you will have extreme difficulty finding it, even though you're in Canada, right? So, um, the American culture machine is just, overrun Canada. So, when we look at culture, most of it's American, right? Anyway, so that's the 20 CDs. Um, we'll continue with the B's in the next video, and maybe we'll get to the A's by that time as well. We'll see. And I hope you liked this video. If you did, give me a thumbs up, and think about subscribing if you haven't yet. I'd appreciate it. And you have a great day, and I will talk to you in my next video. All right, and bye for now.